The phone rang at 2 a.m., a shrill scream slicing through my dreams. I fumbled for it, heart pounding, knowing only one person would call at this hour, Dad. "Lila, I need you," he slurred, his voice thick with whiskey and desperation, the sound of slot machines clanging in the background. I was 35, single, and drowning in a life I hadn't chosen. For years, I'd been wiring Dad $2,000 a month to keep him afloat. His gambling addiction a black hole that swallowed my savings and my sanity. My brother, Ethan, had warned me to stop. But how do you abandon the man who raised you, even if he's a ghost of who he used to be? It started small. Dad's lucky nights at the casino when I was a kid, his eyes bright with hope. Mom left when I was 10, unable to stomach his promises of one last bet. By the time I was in my 20s, working as a graphic designer in Seattle, I was his lifeline. He'd call, voice trembling, swearing he'd hit rock bottom, and I'd send the money, believing each time would be the last. But it never was. That night, I dragged myself out of bed, threw on a hoodie, and drove to the seedy casino on the edge of town. The neon lights buzzed like a headache, and there he was, slumped at a poker table, his gray hair disheveled, his suit wrinkled. "Lila, sweetheart," he mumbled, reaching for me. I pulled back, my chest tight with a familiar mix of love and rage. "Lila, I'm in deep this time," he said, eyes darting to a man in a leather jacket hovering nearby, his gaze cold and predatory. "I owe Vinny $10. 000. If I don't pay by tomorrow." His voice cracked, and I felt the weight of his words crush me. I wanted to scream, to shake him until he saw what he was doing to us. Instead, I asked, "How did it get this bad?" He didn't answer, just stared at the floor. I handed over my credit card to cover his tab at the bar, my hand shaking. The bartender, a woman with tired eyes, whispered, "You don't have to keep doing this. You know." But I did, didn't I? He was my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who stayed up late helping with my art projects, who cried when I graduated college. That man was still in there, somewhere, buried under the wreckage of his addiction. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my bank account, $3,247. Barely enough to cover rent, let alone Dad's debt. I called Ethan, who lived an hour away, working as a mechanic. "I can't keep doing this," I said, my voice breaking. "But I don't know how to stop." "Lila, he's not your responsibility," Ethan said, his tone sharp but laced with pain. "He's dragging you down with him. You're killing yourself to save someone who doesn't want to be saved." I hung up, tears burning my eyes. Ethan didn't understand. He'd cut Dad off years ago, but I couldn't. Not yet. I wired another $2,000 to Dad's account, my stomach churning as I hit send. It was a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, but it was all I had. The next morning, I found a voicemail from Dad. "Lila, I'm sorry," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'll make it right. I swear." I deleted it, my heart a tangle of hope and doubt. I'd heard those words before, too many times. At work, I was a zombie, my designs lackluster, my boss noticing. "You okay, Lila?" she asked. I nodded, forcing a smile. But I wasn't okay. I was sinking, and I didn't know how to swim. That evening, I went to Dad's apartment, a cramped, smoke-stained place littered with empty bottles and unpaid bills. He was sober, for once, but his hands shook as he poured coffee. "I'm trying, Lila," he said. "I'm going to a meeting tomorrow. Gamblers Anonymous." I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so badly it hurt. "Dad, you've said this before," I said softly. "What's different this time?" He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. You're different. You're carrying my mistakes, and I can't let you anymore." For a moment, I saw the father I'd lost, the one who'd carried me on his shoulders at the fair, who'd promised to always protect me. I hugged him, tears soaking his shirt. "Okay, Dad," I whispered. "One more chance." But as I drove home, doubt crept in. I'd been here before, hadn't I? The promises, the tears, the fleeting hope. I didn't know how much longer I could hold on. The next week was a blur of hope and dread. Dad went to his first Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and I dared to believe things might change. He called me after, his voice brighter than it had been in years. "Lila, I met people like me," he said. "They get it. I'm not alone." I clung to those words, replaying them when doubt gnawed at me. But the casino's pull was strong, and I knew it. I started checking his bank account, something I'd never done before, feeling like a traitor but needing to know. The $2,000 I'd sent was gone, spent on God knows what. My heart sank, but I told myself he needed time. Ethan came over that weekend, his jaw tight as he surveyed my tiny apartment, cluttered with sketches and unpaid bills. "You're still sending him money, aren't you?" he said. Not a question, but an accusation. "He's trying." "Ethan," I said, defensive. "He's going to meetings." Ethan snorted, running a hand through his dark hair. "Lila, he's been trying for years. You're enabling him. You're throwing your life away." His words stung because they were true. My savings were gone. My credit cards maxed out. I'd stopped going out with friends. Stopped dreaming of the art studio I'd always wanted. My life was a treadmill, and I was running to nowhere. "I can't just abandon him," I said, my voice cracking. "He's our dad." "He's not my dad anymore," Ethan said, his eyes hard. "He's a stranger who's hurting you. Walk away, Lila, before it's too late." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Instead, I changed the subject, asking about his new girlfriend, his job, anything to avoid the truth. After he left, I sat alone, staring at a photo of us as kids, Dad, Ethan, and me at the beach, laughing under a bright sun. I didn't recognize that family anymore. A few days later, Dad called, sounding panicked. "Lila, I need $5,000. Vinny's guys are after me again." My stomach dropped. I'd thought the debt was settled, but here it was, rearing its ugly head. "Dad, I don't have $5,000. I said, my voice shaking. "I gave you everything last week." I know, he said, frantic. "But I messed up. I went back to the casino. Just once. I swear. I thought I could win it back." The room spun. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "You promised," I whispered. "You said you were done." "I'm sorry, Lila," he said, and I could hear him crying. "Please. They'll kill me." I hung up, my chest heaving. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him feel the weight of what he'd done. But I didn't. I called my bank, took out a loan I couldn't afford, and sent the money. I told myself it was to keep him safe. But deep down, I knew I was feeding the monster. The next day, I went to his apartment unannounced. He wasn't there. Instead, I found a stack of casino receipts on his table, dated the night before. He'd taken my money and gone straight back. I sank to the floor, the receipts crumpling in my hands, and sobbed. When he came home, he found me there, tears streaming down my face. "Lila," he said, startled. "What are you doing here?" "Why, Dad?" I asked, holding up the receipts. "Why do you keep doing this to me?" He didn't answer, just looked away, shame etched into every line of his face. For the first time, I saw him not as my father, but as a man trapped by his own demons, a man I couldn't save. "I'm done," I said, my voice steady despite the tears. "I can't do this anymore." "Lila, please," he begged, reaching for me. "I'll change. I swear. But I walked out, my heart breaking with every step. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again, but I knew I couldn't keep living for his promises. Walking away from Dad felt like amputating a limb. Every day, I fought the urge to call him, to check if he was okay. But I held firm, deleting his voicemails without listening, blocking his number when the guilt became too much. Ethan was proud of me, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like betrayal. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to distract myself from the ache in my chest. My boss noticed the change, praising my new designs, but I couldn't take pride in them. They were born of pain, not passion. One night, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Vinny, the loan shark. Your dad's in trouble, he said, his voice smooth but menacing. He's got a week to pay $20. 000, or things get ugly. My blood ran cold. I'm not his bank anymore, I said, trying to sound strong. Talk to him. Vinny laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. You think you can just walk away? He's got no one else. Sweetheart, you don't pay. He's dead. I hung up, my hands trembling. I wanted to believe it was a bluff, but I'd seen Vinny's type before, men who thrived on fear, who didn't hesitate to follow through. I called Ethan, my voice shaking as I told him everything. We're done with him, Lila, Ethan said, but there was a waver in his voice. He made his choices. But what if they kill him? I asked, tears spilling over. Can we live with that? Ethan was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he finally said. But you can't keep saving him. It's killing you. I didn't sleep that night, torn between fear for Dad and anger at myself for caring. The next day, I went to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, hoping to understand what I was up against. The room was filled with people like Dad, broken, hopeful, fighting a battle they often lost. A woman named Sarah, about my age, shared her story of enabling her husband's addiction until she hit her breaking point. You can't love someone out of this, she said, her eyes meeting mine. They have to want it. Her words stuck with me, but they didn't ease the guilt. I started researching addiction, reading about enabling and codependency, terms that hit too close to home. I'd spent years thinking I was helping Dad, but I'd been feeding his disease, keeping him sick. A week later, I got a letter from Dad, handwritten and smudged with what looked like tears. Lila, I'm so sorry. It began. I've lost everything, but losing you hurts the most. I'm checking into rehab. Please don't give up on me. I read it over and over, my heart twisting. Rehab was a step, but I'd heard promises before. I didn't respond, but I kept the letter, tucking it into a drawer like a fragile piece of hope. Then came the call that changed everything. It was Ethan, his voice shaking with rage. Lila, you need to see this. Meet me at Dad's place. Now. I drove over, my stomach in knots. When I got there, Ethan was in the living room, holding a stack of papers. Look at this, he said, thrusting them at me. They were bank statements. Not Dad's, but Mom's sour mother, who'd left us 25 years ago. What is this? I asked, confused. Dad's been lying to us, Ethan said, his voice low and furious. He's been in touch with her for years, and she's been sending him money too. I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. Mom had been gone so long I barely remembered her face. But here was proof she'd been part of Dad's life, funding his addiction just like I had. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd felt before. We need to find her, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. We need answers. Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. Let's do it. Finding Mom was easier than I expected. Ethan tracked her down through an old friend of Dad's, a retired cop who'd kept tabs on her. She was living in Portland, just a few hours away, running a small bookstore. The idea that she'd been so close all these years made my chest ache. We drove to Portland the next day, the silence between us heavy with unspoken questions. What would we say to the woman who'd abandoned us? What did she owe us, if anything? I clutched Dad's letter in my pocket, its words a tether to the chaos of my emotions. The bookstore was quaint, with warm lights and shelves crammed with novels. Mom was behind the counter, her hair gray, but her face unmistakably the one from my childhood memories. She looked up as we entered, and her eyes widened, recognition dawning. "Lila. Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. Oh my God. I wanted to scream, to demand why she'd left, why she'd sent Dad money but never reached out to us. Instead, I said, "We need to talk." She led us to a back room, her hands shaking as she poured tea. "I never thought I'd see you again," she said, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't cut it," Ethan snapped. "You left us. And now we find out you've been bankrolling Dad's gambling." Her face crumpled. "I didn't know how bad it was at first," she said. "When I left, I thought he'd get better. But he kept calling, begging for help. I sent money to keep him from dragging you kids into it." "You failed," I said, my voice cold. "I've been paying him $2,000 a month for years. I'm drowning because of it." She gasped, covering her mouth. "Lila, I had no idea. I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting us," Ethan said, his voice rising. "You left us with him. You knew what he was, and you walked away." She sobbed, and part of me wanted to comfort her, but I couldn't. The pain of her absence, of her secret involvement, was too raw. "Why didn't you tell us?" I asked. "Why didn't you come back?" "I was ashamed," she said. "I thought you were better off without me. I was wrong." We sat in silence, the weight of her words settling over us. I didn't know if I could forgive her, but I needed to understand. "What now?" I asked. "Dad's in rehab, but he's in debt to dangerous people. What do we do?" She hesitated, then said, "I'll pay off his debt. It's the least I can do. But you have to promise me something." "What?" Ethan asked, wary. "Don't let him pull you back in," she said, looking at me. "You've given enough." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. We left the bookstore with her promise to handle Vinny. But the conversation left me hollow. Mom wasn't the villain I'd imagined, but she wasn't a hero either. She was just human, flawed and broken like the rest of us. Back in Seattle, I visited Dad in rehab. He looked better, his eyes clearer, but I kept my distance. "I'm proud of you," I said, meaning it but guarding my heart. "But I can't be your safety net anymore." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know, Lila. I'm sorry." I left, feeling lighter but still tethered to the past. Mom's money cleared Dad's debt, but it didn't erase the years of pain. I started therapy, learning to untangle my guilt from my love for him. Ethan and I began rebuilding our relationship, leaning on each other in ways we hadn't before. But the story wasn't over. A month later, I got a call from the rehab center. Dad had left, against medical advice. My heart sank. But this time, I didn't chase him. I couldn't. Dad's disappearance from rehab hit like a punch to the gut. I spent days calling his old haunts, the casino, his friends, anyone who might know where he'd gone. No one had answers. Ethan refused to help, saying, he made his choice. Lila, let him go. But letting go wasn't that simple. I lay awake at night, imagining him dead in an alley, Vinny's men standing over him. The guilt was a living thing, clawing at my chest. Had I pushed him too far? Had my ultimatum driven him to this? I threw myself into therapy, where my counselor, Dr. Ellis, forced me to confront the truth. You're not responsible for his choices, she said. You've been carrying his addiction like it's yours. It's time to set it down." Her words made sense, but they didn't quiet the storm in my head. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years, pouring my pain onto the canvas. The colors were dark at first, blacks and reds, jagged lines of anger, but slowly they softened, blues and greens emerging like a tentative hope. One day, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a letter from Dad, along with a small, worn notebook. "Lila," the letter read, "I'm not coming back. Not because I don't love you, but because I need to fix myself. This is my journal from rehab. I want you to have it." I opened the notebook, my hands trembling. It was filled with his thoughts, raw and unfiltered. He wrote about his shame, his love for me and Ethan, his fear of failing us again. One entry stopped me cold. "I've been lying to Lila about her mother. She thinks Ellen left because of me, but it was more complicated. I pushed her away, but she stayed in touch, trying to help. I never told Lila because I didn't want her to hate me more." I sat back, stunned. Dad had known about Mom's involvement all along, had let me believe she'd abandoned us completely. The betrayal cut deep, but it also clarified something. Dad's lies weren't just about gambling. They were about control, about keeping us tethered to his chaos. I called Ethan, reading him the entry. He was silent for a long time, then said, "He's been manipulating us for years. I'm done. Lila, I have to be." I didn't argue. I felt the same, but saying it out loud was harder. Instead, I kept reading the journal, page after page of Dad's struggles, his small victories, his relapses. It was a window into a man I both loved and didn't know. Weeks passed, and I focused on rebuilding my life. I paid off my credit card debt with a freelance project, started saving for that art studio I dreamed of. Ethan and I met with Mom again, this time for coffee, not confrontation. She was cautious, but we talked about small things: her bookstore, my paintings, Ethan's new promotion. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. Then came the news. A friend of Dad's called, saying he'd been spotted in Vegas, back at the tables. My heart sank, but I didn't cry. I didn't call him. I didn't send money. Instead, I went to my easel and painted a bright, defiant canvas, full of light and possibility. I realized something that night. I wasn't responsible for Dad's choices, but I was responsible for mine. And I chose to live. Life without Dad's shadow was strange, like waking up in a house you didn't recognize. I kept expecting his calls, his pleas, but they didn't come. The silence was both a relief and a wound. I leaned on Ethan and my art, finding solace in routine. My paintings started selling, small pieces at first, then larger ones. A local gallery offered me a solo show, a dream I'd buried under years of Dad's chaos. I poured everything into it, every stroke a step toward reclaiming myself. But the past wasn't done with me. One evening, as I was setting up for the show, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Lila, it's Dad. I need to see you. Please." My heart raced, a mix of hope and dread. I didn't respond, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The night of the gallery show was electric. My paintings lined the walls, vibrant and raw, each one a piece of my story. Friends, colleagues, and strangers mingled, their voices a warm hum. Ethan was there, proud but quiet, his presence a steady anchor. Even Mom came, standing awkwardly in the corner, her eyes tracing my work. As the night wound down, I saw him, Dad, standing in the doorway, older and frilier than I remembered, his eyes red but sober. My breath caught, and the room seemed to fade away. "Lila," he said, his voice soft. "I'm so proud of you." I wanted to run, to scream, to hug him. Instead, I stood frozen, my heart pounding. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I wanted to see you," he said. "I'm trying. Lila, I've been clean for a month. No gambling. No drinking. I needed you to know. I searched his face, looking for the lie, but all I saw was a tired, broken man. I'm glad you're trying, I said, my voice steady. But I can't trust you. Not yet. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I know. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. And that I love you. He left before I could respond, disappearing into the night. I stood there, shaking, as Ethan put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? He asked. I don't know, I said, tears spilling over. But I think I will be. The show was a success. But Dad's visit lingered. A ghost I couldn't shake. I talked it over with Dr. Ellis, who helped me see it for what it was, a step, not a promise. I couldn't control Dad's recovery, but I could control how I responded. I started setting boundaries, small ones at first. I unblocked his number, but didn't call. I kept painting, kept working, kept building a life that was mine. Ethan and I grew closer, our shared pain forging a new bond. Mom sent me a letter, not asking for forgiveness, but offering to listen, to be there if I wanted. I didn't write back, but I kept the door open. One day, I got a call from the rehab center. Dad was back, this time for a longer program. They said he was doing well, but I didn't let myself hope too hard. I'd been burned before. Instead, I focused on the present me art. My brother. My own healing. I wasn't free of the past, but I was learning to live with it, to carry it without letting it define me. A year later, I stood in my new art studio, a small space filled with light and color. My paintings covered the walls, each one a testament to the life I'd fought for. The scars of Dad's addiction were still there, but they were fading, softened by time and choice. Dad was still in rehab, making progress. Or so they said. He wrote me letters, short and careful, never asking for money or forgiveness, just sharing his days. I read them, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling, but I didn't write back. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Ethan and I had dinner every Sunday, a ritual that grounded us. We talked about everything: his engagement, my art, our childhood, but rarely Dad. It wasn't avoidance. It was survival. We'd both given too much to his chaos, and now we were learning to protect our peace. Mom became a quiet presence in my life. We met for coffee a few times, each meeting less awkward than the last. She told me about her own struggles, her guilt, her attempts to make amends. I listened, not promising anything, but I felt the anger slipping away, replaced by a cautious hope. One day, I got a call from Dad's counselor. He's graduating the program, she said. He'd like you to come, but he understands if you don't. I thought about it for days, weighing the risk against the possibility. In the end, I went, Ethan at my side. The ceremony was small, held in a community center with folding chairs and bad coffee. Dad stood at the front, nervous but proud, his face healthier than I'd seen in years. When he saw us, his eyes lit up. Lila, Ethan, he said, his voice breaking. Thank you for coming. We didn't hug, didn't cry, but we talked. He told us about his recovery, his new job at a hardware store, his plans to stay clean. I listened, guarded but open, and for the first time, I believed he might make it. I don't expect you to trust me, he said, but I'm going to keep trying. Every day, to be the father you deserve. I nodded, tears in my eyes. That's all I want. Dad, I said, just keep trying. We left the ceremony with no promises, no grand reconciliations, but a sense of possibility. I didn't know if Dad would stay clean, if we'd ever be the family we once were. But I knew I was done carrying his burdens. Back in my studio, I painted a new Pisces sunrise, bold and bright, rising over a jagged horizon. It was for me, for Ethan, for the life we were building. The past would always be there, But it didn't own us anymore. I'd paid $2,000 a month for Dad's gambling habit. But the real cost was my heart, my hope, my years. The shocking secret of Mom's involvement had forced me to face the truth, to walk away from a cycle that was killing me. And in walking away, I'd found myself.